For 15 years, I designed the kind of silence that keeps astronauts sane. Project Lazarus was supposed to be my greatest achievement, a cryostasis architecture built to preserve life for centuries without consciousness, without dreaming. I wrote the interface code myself. I signed the last authorization packet before the ship disappeared beyond Neptune. And then I spent the next decade watching my life decay while the world pretended the project had never existed. Until last week. At 02:13 UTC, a forgotten deep space relay near the edge of the Kuiper Belt came alive for the first time in centuries. It transmitted one short burst, narrowband, encrypted with an old Lazarus key. The signal wasn't random noise, it was speech. Fragmented, distorted, but unmistakable. The crew is alive, awake. Don't open the airlock. By dawn, I was on a government jet. They didn't ask. They ordered. They said, "You're the only one who can talk to them." The recovery vessel Erebus was waiting in orbit by the time I arrived. Its corridors smelled like disinfectant and stale fear. The crew barely looked at me as I came aboard. The commander, Ruiz, shook my hand once and didn't say a word for the next hour. There's a certain quiet that hangs over classified missions, like everyone already knows they've gone too far. We reached the Lazarus Arc 5 days later. It was huge, 1/2 mile of dark metal turning slowly against the stars. The hull plating was scorched and pitted, flecked with ice that drifted like spores in vacuum. I recognized every contour of that ship because I'd helped design it 20 years ago. But seeing it adrift out here felt wrong, like finding your own coffin floating in space. As we matched rotation and locked to the docking ring, Ruiz turned toward me. "You said they were in stasis," he muttered. "Explain this." "I don't know," I told him. "If they're awake, it isn't by our design." The airlock connected with a hollow clang that rattled through the hull. When the indicator light turned green, Ruiz looked at me again. "Dr. Hale, you're first." Inside, everything was dead quiet. No hum, no air circulation, just the faint crackle of our comms. Our helmet lamps cut narrow paths through corridors coated in frost. Along the walls, the stasis conduits pulsed with dim light, still powered somehow, drawing energy from reactors that should have failed centuries ago. Then we reached the first pod ring. Dozens of transparent capsules lined the chamber in concentric arcs. Faces floated behind the frost, pale and expressionless, veins threaded with silver wiring that shouldn't have existed in the original design. I moved closer to one of the pods and wiped a circle clean on the glass. The nameplate below read, "Commander R. Levant." Her eyes were open, wide open, and she was breathing. The sensors on my wrist flickered. Life signs. Detected. Neural activity active. Every metric screamed impossible. These people had been in cryostasis for more than 3 centuries. Their bodies should have been inert, their brains dormant. But they were awake. A soft noise broke through the comms, static at first, then whispering. I thought it was interference until it began to shape into words. "Please, don't let it out." Ruiz froze. "Who said that?" No one answered. The voice wasn't coming through the comm system. It was local, transmitted through the stasis net itself, the neural relay I had built to keep dreams from forming. I ran a systems check. The network wasn't receiving our input anymore. It was broadcasting. Every pod in the chamber came alive with faint blue light. The faces inside began to twitch, lips moving in silent repetition. Hundreds of mouths forming the same words again and again. "Don't open the airlock. Don't open it." Then, somewhere deep in the ship, something knocked. Once, metal against metal. A slow, deliberate sound. Ruiz's voice was shaking now. "Engineering decks sealed, right?" "It should be," I said, but my voice didn't sound sure. We started back toward the junction corridor. As we moved, the lights dimmed behind us one by one, as though the ship was watching. That's when the environmental sensors tripped, pressure rising. Someone, or something, was opening the secondary airlock from the inside. Pressure climbed in a steady slope, not a spike. Whatever was cycling the secondary lock knew our thresholds and stayed just under alarm limits until the last possible moment. That was the first detail that made my stomach go cold. Accidents don't throttle themselves. "Seal the collar," Ruiz ordered. "Hard lock. If they breach, I want a buffer." Kaminsky's hands moved over the panel with the mechanical precision of a man who preferred numbers to people. Collar sealed. Interlock engaged. The corridor lights dimmed again, then returned with a faint delay, as if the ship was thinking about it. I pulled the portable diagnostics case off my shoulder and snapped the lid open. The Lazarus neural bus was behind the bulkhead, a ribbon of alloy threaded along the ship's spine, carrying the tiny night of 1,000 minds. I looped an inductive coupler over the conduit and linked it to my wrist display. The first reading was impossible. The dream suppression net had inverted mode. "We built this to absorb noise," I said. "It's transmitting." "Transmitting what?" Park asked. "Whatever the sleepers are thinking." A whisper ran through the channel and then settled into a pattern. Not one voice, a chorus of hundreds, braided into a rough signal that snapped into focus in short bursts. "Don't open! Please, hold the door shut. It learns. It copies." Ruiz's eyes flicked from me to the sealed hatch down the corridor. "What is it?" No one answered. Somewhere beneath our boots, the hull flexed with a slow, deliberate complaint, like a building settling after an earthquake. You don't feel that in space unless something large changes pressure or structure. The ship wasn't just old, it was resisting. "Engineering deck shows vent cycles," Sato said, reading from the wall display. "But the script isn't ours. Different signature." "How different?" I asked. "Like someone rewrote the sequence using our bones." Another knock wandered up the frame. Not a slam, a measured contact, metal on metal. The sound carried in the structure and arrived a heartbeat late, as if the distance was longer than the corridor looked. The pressure trace touched a red line. The lock paused there, like an animal smelling air through a crack beneath a door. "Marcus," Ruiz said, "can you talk to them?" I widened the coupler's band and opened the throttles on the interface, careful not to push my signal back into the net. We had built safety gates, so the sleeping brain would never feel us. Someone had disabled those gates a long time ago. The first surge hit like cold water behind my eyes. Not pain, orientation. 1,000 static points arranging themselves into a shape my mind knew how to read. Corridors, bays, faces behind glass. Then the shape turned and looked at me. This is the part I won't be able to prove later. There won't be a graph for it. No printout will make the sense that hit me in that corridor. But I will say it anyway. The crew wasn't just awake. They were connected. The stasis net we designed to cancel dreams had been repurposed into a nervous system stretched across the ship. "We woke early," the chorus said, in my head and through the wrist display at the same time. Maintenance cycle failed. Temperature drift triggered pathways we were never meant to use. We heard each other. We stabilized. Then the signal found us. "What signal?" I asked, forgetting to mute my exterior mic. "Pattern, not voice. It pressed on the blank parts of our sleep like fingers on glass. It learned our timing. It learned the shape of hunger." The secondary lock twitched under whatever worked its controls. Pressure dipped, then climbed. The thing on the other side was testing tolerances. I pictured a child pushing a door to learn where the hinge groans. I also pictured the ocean under Europa's ice and made myself stop. Park lifted her cutter. "We can weld the outer seam." "It's not the seam," I said. "It's the script. It's in the ship now." Sato shook his head, jaw tight. The Lazarus core is isolated from command. There's no bridge. Not originally, I said. Somebody built one when they woke. Ruiz leaned closer. Why would they do that? So they could think together. So they could lock the doors. The voice in my head softened, a ripple across a field of tired minds. We locked everything we could reach, the chorus said. We starved the path the pattern wanted. It learned us faster than we learned it. It is not in a place. It is in a way of moving. Can it cross into us? Ruiz asked. Silence. Then the answer none of us wanted. If you open a way. The knock came again, closer now, not frantic, patient. 3 measured taps, like someone checking for rot in wood. Options, Ruiz snapped. Kill the block, Kaminsky said. Venting the adjacent passage might freeze and seize the mechanism. Venting means opening something, Park countered. That's exactly what the voices are telling us not to do. We could cut power to the secondary lock, Sato said. Hard cut. Starve it. The chorus surged through my display with a kind of restrained urgency. Not power. It uses residual potential. It rides edges. Remove heat. Cryo flood, I asked. You want us to dump coolant into the lock chamber? Yes, the chorus said. Make the air slow. Make it still. It moves in fast things. It sounded insane until it didn't. Some signals live in change. Some algorithms ride turbulence like a surfer rides a wave. The colder and steadier the environment, the fewer gradients to exploit. Coolant will flash freeze the seals, Sato warned. If we do this, that door stays closed. Good, the chorus said, in a single voice hard enough to make my teeth hurt. Leave it that way. Ruiz made his decision without looking at us. Do it. We split. Sato and Kaminsky ran back toward the power junction to reroute refrigerant lines. Park and I took the manual trunk and hauled open a maintenance hatch above the lock housing. The temperature inside the shaft was already dropping, a thin rime of frost cracking under our gloves. I clipped my tether and slid in feet first. The lock's machinery lay beneath me like a dismantled clock. Levers, actuators, magnetic clamps. None of it moving yet. All of it held at the cusp of motion. I could feel it through the metal, tiny tensions, ready to cascade. Park handed me a spool of emergency coolant hose. You sure about this? No, I said, but it's the only idea that doesn't require trust. We cracked the valve. Liquid cold spilled into the lock housing with a soft hiss like a sleeping animal's breath. The effect was immediate. Frost spread in lines, mapping the stress across the metal. The pressure trace on my display flattened. The subtle microtremor in the hull stopped. For a minute, the only sounds were our respirations and the faint creak of metal contracting in the cold. Then, something brushed the shaft beneath my boots. It was not a touch in the usual sense, more like a change in decision. The ship had been preparing to move, and now it decided not to. The sensation left a taste like old batteries in my mouth. Sato's voice came through the comms, thin but steady. Refrigerant loop is stable, chamber temp dropping toward triple digits below freezing. Hold it there, Ruiz said. The chorus stirred again, softer this time, like tired people letting go of a breath they had held too long. Thank you, they said. I closed the valve. Park and I hauled ourselves out of the shaft and resealed the hatch. Frost rimed her visor. She wiped it with the back of her glove. What now? Now we see how badly it wants another door, Ruiz said. We moved back toward the ring. As we passed the pods, the faces inside had changed. Not expression, arrangement. Their eyes were closed again. The blue lines of the neural interfaces had dimmed to the faintest pulse, slow and even. For the first time since boarding, the Ark felt like a sleeping ship instead of a trap. I let myself believe that for about 10 seconds. Then the lights along the ceiling flickered in a pattern I recognized from old Lazarus testbeds, a diagnostic handshake. Except we weren't running diagnostics. The ship was. "Marcus," Ruiz said carefully, "are you doing that?" "No." The handshake repeated. Lights. Pause. Lights again, like a heartbeat remembering its rhythm. My wrist display pinged with a request. It wasn't coming from the stasis net or from command. It was coming from the hull. The Ark wanted to talk to me. "Authorize nothing," Ruiz said. "I won't," I told him. I keyed a read-only accept and opened a window that would let me see, without touching. The data that spilled across the display was not a log or a status sheet. It was a map of attention. The ship had learned where we were. It had marked us like hot pins in a diagram. One mark for Ruiz, one for Park, one for me. Then slowly, a fourth mark emerged near the docking collar, a place no one currently occupied. "Who's at the collar?" Ruiz asked. "Empty," Kaminsky said. "I have clear cams." The fourth mark pulsed. Then it moved, not along a corridor, through the wall. It stopped at the coupling grid between the Ark and the Erebus. If something crossed there, it would be inside our ship, not theirs. "Decouple," Ruiz said, voice flat. "Primary clamps are frozen," Kaminsky replied, hands already moving. The cryo flood seized the collar. I stared at the moving mark, while the chorus in my head went very quiet, the way a ward goes silent when a nurse drops a tray. "It doesn't need doors," I said. "It just needs a path with motion." Ruiz didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "Suggestions. Kill every pump on our side," I said. "Shut the fans. Stabilize temperature. Make the air heavy. No flow. No data handshakes. Nothing that moves fast." "That will take life support below spec," Sato said softly. "We'll live," I said. "If it crosses, we might not." Ruiz gave the order. The Erebus responded like a disciplined animal holding its breath underwater. Fans dropped to a whisper. Panel lights faded to a dim, steady glow. I could feel my own breath growing damp in my helmet. On my display, the fourth mark slowed. It pressed against the coupling grid like a fingertip testing glass. Then it did something I didn't expect. It withdrew. It wasn't retreat. It was recognition. We had taken away the current it wanted to ride. The path was gone. For now. The chorus spoke again, each word pulled through fatigue. "We learned the same way," they said. "It will try another door. There is one more you must freeze." "Which one?" I asked. "The human one," they said. "Us." Park's head turned toward me. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, feeling the shape of the answer before I believed it. "They want us to cut the net, sever their connection, put them back into true sleep." Ruiz stared at the pods, then back at me. "If we do that, can they survive?" "I designed it for that," I said. "But the net is holding them together now. If I cut wrong, some of them won't come back." The chorus didn't argue. "If you don't," they said, "none of us will." The knock came again, from somewhere far below the decks we could reach, patient as weather. We didn't draw straws. Ruiz just looked at me, and I knew I was the one who had to do it. "The neural core is midship," I said. "2 decks below the hub, behind a mechanical isolation gate. If the bridge still works, I can open it without power spikes." "Take Park," Ruiz said. "Sato, Kaminsky, hold the coupling grid cold and quiet. If anything moves, you call it before it breathes." We moved. Fans were already down to a whisper. The air felt heavy and damp, a greenhouse without the plants. Our boots thudded softly against the deck. Somewhere behind the walls, coolant creaked like old bones in winter. The path to the core took us back through the pod ring. I tried not to look at the faces. I failed. They were no longer staring with eyes wide and fearful. Lids rested, jaws unclenched. The blue traces along their temples had dimmed to a slow heartbeat. The sight didn't comfort me. The quieter they were, the more the ship felt like it was listening for something else. We reached a bulkhead with a manual wheel and an inspection grill. Old design. I liked old designs. They don't pretend to be anything but stubborn metal. I spun the wheel until my shoulders burned and the gate cracked open. Air whispered across my gloves. No rush. Good sign. Beyond the gate, the corridor narrowed. We crawled single file, lights cutting tight ovals ahead. The paint on the walls was peppered with tiny pits from age and stress. Every mark was a year none of us had lived. At the end of the crawl space, a hatch waited with my name on it. Not literal, not written, but the shape of it lived in my memory from a room we had built on a ground floor years ago. Mechanical latch, double gasket, no powered locks. Someone in the Lazarus design team had believed there would be a day when power was the enemy. Maybe that someone had been me. I cracked the latch and lifted. Cold rolled out like breath from a cellar. Inside, the core chamber glimmered with frost. The stasis net ran through here as fat bundles of alloy and ceramic threaded on shock mounts. Where the bundles met, they spread into a lattice of junctions like the trunk and branches of a leafless tree. Park stood at my shoulder. Say it to me like I'm 5. Each bundle is a bus, I said. The net cancels dreams by dampening peaks and filling valleys. When the sleepers woke and linked, the same bus became a nervous system. Right now they're sharing attention across this lattice. If I open every isolator at once, we sever the link. Their minds fall back into individual loops. True sleep. And if you miss, they fragment while awake. I didn't soften it. That can kill a mind. The chorus brushed the edge of my thoughts, softer than before. We accept the risk. Park set her jaw. Then no misses. I crossed to the panel that controlled the isolators. It was more primitive than the one I remembered. Someone had replaced field programmable logic with rotary selectors and mechanical latches. Smart. You can't coax a mechanical notch to change its mind. You can only move it. I took a breath and opened the diagnostic window on my wrist display. The ship answered with the same hesitant handshake. I let it read only. No returns. I mapped the lattice with quick sweeps, marking concentrations of traffic. The brightest knots clustered around the pod rings we'd passed, and a wedge farther forward that I hadn't seen. Another ring, or a lab. The moving mark near the coupling grid pulsed again, slow as a thought sinking through cold water. On the Erebus, Kaminsky spoke without being asked. Grid is quiet, holding. Copy, Ruiz said. I put my hands on the first 2 isolator levers. On my count, I told Park. Every lever on each bank moves together, smooth, no ricochet. She nodded. Her voice was calm. On you. 1. A whisper came through the net, not the chorus. A single voice. I knew it in a way that made my stomach flip. It used my mother's tone on a day she had told me I had done enough work for one lifetime. It used a sentence she had never said. Marcus, it murmured. You're tired. Let someone else. I did not move my hands. I looked straight ahead and said, It copies. Park's hand tightened on my arm, once. 2. I pulled. The first bank thumped into open. A pressure I hadn't known I was holding let go. Not air. Expectation. The net's field strength dipped. The blue traces on the cable skins dimmed another fraction. Next, I said. We moved down the banks. Levers. Thump. Levers. Thump. After the 4th, the chorus rolled through me like distant surf. Faster, they said. It is learning this too. What is it doing? Park asked. Rebinding, I said. Trying to root around the cut. It can root around metal you've opened with your hands. If it thinks like a river, I said, it finds another channel. We hit the 5th bank hard and clean. The lattice flickered on my display. Pockets of activity collapsed like lungs exhaling. Others brightened. One corner of the map swelled in a way that didn't belong to anything I had built. "Park," I said. "Look at the far bundle. The one with the dull finish. That's not factory." She swept her light. The bundle I'd pointed to sat a handspan away from the mount where it should have been. Its sheathing was a darker metal, almost black. The clamps were mismatched. Someone had built this after launch. Years after. Maybe centuries. "Add-on bus," I said. "A bridge. They must have installed it when they woke. To talk faster. To be together," I said. "And to hold the doors." Behind the dark bundle, something moved. Not motion, a change of intent. Hair rose along the back of my neck. "Get ready," I said. "When I cut that bridge, the chorus will go thin. We can't stop halfway." Park anchored her boots and planted her hands on the two big levers that fed the add-on bus. "On you." The ship spoke then, not the chorus, not the copied voice. The hull itself found a tone and held it, a low metal note like a breath drawn very slowly and never let go. In my display, the fourth mark at the coupling grid began to fatten again. It had found a sliver of motion somewhere we hadn't quieted. Heat creep, panel oscillation, something stupid and human. "Kaminsky," I said. "Kill heat on the collar electronics. Kill everything." "Already dead," he said, calm because he had decided to be. It found the battery trickle on a status LED, cutting now. The mark thinned. It did not vanish. "Marcus," the chorus said. "We are ready." 3, Park said, because she could see I was about to hold my breath forever. 2, 1. We pulled the bridge levers. The effect was not a sound. It was a subtraction. The map on my wrist went almost dark in an instant, like a city grid losing power until only emergency lights remained. The chorus fell silent. For a heartbeat, I thought I had cut them all away forever. Then, faint as wind through grass, a handful of pulses returned. Individual loops, not linked, not conscious, sleeping. "Status," Rui said. I swallowed. "The net is severed. Most of them are down. A few are still stabilized by local loop. That's safe." Sato's voice came in tight. "Pressure at secondary lock is flat, no movement." Kaminsky exhaled into his mic and forgot to let go of the push to talk. It sounded like an old man putting down a heavy box. Park leaned her helmet against the cold frame of the panel. "We did it." I wanted to believe her. I almost did. Then the add-on bus we had cut glowed with a pale warmth through the frost, as if from heat that had no source. The metal wasn't warming the air. The intention was warming the metal. My wrist display blinked with a request. Not from the Ark, from my suit. It wasn't asking for command. It was asking a question I wish no machine would ever learn to ask. Identity. I closed my eyes. I had used read-only. I had kept hands off. And yet, the first surge in the ring, the ship mapping our attention, the moment in the shaft when the mechanism changed its mind under my boots. There are a dozen ways for information to cross without permission when you forget that bodies are also conductors. I shut down the suit link. Manual mode, no handshakes. I killed haptic cues and auditory prompts. I turned my beautiful smart skin into dumb cloth and plastic. The request repeated once, unanswered, and then slid away along a path I could not see. "Marcus," Park asked. "Talk to me." "It touched my interface," I said. "I shut it off. We're fine." We were not fine. A latch clicked somewhere in the ring. Park heard it too. We turned together. It wasn't the secondary lock. It was a pod. A single capsule in the nearest stack had started to open. The display by its base showed no command, no countdown, no authorization. The seals lifted a finger's width and held there, like a mouth deciding whether to speak. I ran. The nameplate read, "Childers, Owen." I knew the file. Medical. Strong cardiovascular. Good sleep metrics, the kind of mind that stabilizes others, the perfect anchor for a network that needs a face. I pressed my palm to the manual override and drove the seal closed. It resisted, then gave with a soft, sticky sigh. The blue tracer around his temple flickered. His eyelids trembled. His mouth shaped a word that had too many meanings and not enough letters. Cold, he breathed. Park stared at me. He is not supposed to be conscious. No, I said. He isn't. Behind us, farther around the ring, another latch clicked. Then another, echoing like slow rain in a hollow place. Ruiz, I said. The pattern is trying a new door. Which one? He asked. Us, I said. Through sympathy, through reflex, through every human instinct that hears someone whisper cold and wants to help. Solution, he said. I looked at the pod, at the frost on the edges of the seal, at the sleeper's breath fogging the glass in the shape of a handprint that was not mine. We keep them cold, I said. Colder than fear, and we don't answer the knocking. We named it because names keep hands steady. Cold protocol meant 3 things: slow the air, thicken the ship, and ignore anything that sounded like mercy. Hold the ring, Ruiz said. No one opens a pod without my voice and his. He pointed at me. 2 keys or nothing. Another latch clicked down the arc, then a third, like deliberate drops hitting metal. I pressed my glove to the first seal and felt the rubber bite back into its groove. Park moved to the next. We worked without talking. Talking gives whatever is listening more to copy. Sato called from the junction. Manifold access is clear. We can push extra coolant through the ring condensers, but the lines aren't rated for it. Do it anyway, Ruiz said. Marcus, if we flood the jackets, the temperature gradient collapses, I said. Convection dies. Less motion for it to ride, but the seals will contract. We could weld the pods shut by accident. The chorus brushed the edge of my head, a tired weather of human thought. Not words. Gratitude shaped into feeling. Then the weight slid away again, as if even that was a luxury they couldn't afford. Kaminsky bled the valves. The ring temperature fell through a slow, deliberate slope. Not a crash. We had learned our lesson about spikes. Frost crawled across the pod flanges in ribs and feathers. The clicking stopped. Then the voices started. Not through comms, not through the net, through memory. A man called my name from down the curve of the chamber. His voice had the smoke-broken rasp of my father the year the doctors told us to expect the end. He said words my father would never have said. Son, open the door. I'm cold. I kept my hands on the seal and my eyes on the gasket. Park, I said, steady. Describe what you see. Only what you see. Her voice was clipped, professional. Frost coalescing, blue tracer steady. No visual condensation inside. No movement except reflection. Good, I said. Keep it boring. We had trained for hallucinations in another lifetime. The trick isn't fighting the image. The trick is starving it of the next moment. It needs you to supply momentum. If you refuse, it stalls. Sato's numbers came in even and flat. Ring temperature at target. Ambient inside the chamber is falling, but within structural tolerance. Fans at minimum. CO2? Ruiz asked. Climbing, Sato said. We can scrub as long as we keep the chemistry on a slow cycle. But we took the ship's lungs down to stop the currents. Our window is hours, not days. Noted. We had built a defense that we could not survive forever. That too has a name. Siege. Marcus, Ruiz said. That bright wedge on your map, the one farther forward. We still don't know what it is. Lab or shop, I said. Where they built their add-on bus. If there's guidance, it will be there. Ruiz made the call. Park stays on the ring with me. Marcus, take Sato. Kaminsky, you are our anchor at the collar. If anything breathes where it shouldn't, you sing before your second breath. We moved. The corridor toward the forward wedge felt narrower than it had on the way in, though nothing had changed except the number of things willing to touch us. Our lamps cut the same oval strips across the same chipped paint. Still felt like walking a familiar house that refused to recognize you. We found the lab behind 2 mechanical latches and a door someone had plated over with scavenged hull. The last plate had been bolted by hand. The wrench used still hung on a wire loop by the frame. I liked those choices. They were human in the right way. Inside, the temperature was colder than the ring. Not just air cold, decision cold. The room had once been a fabrication bay. The printers were dead. The feedstock bins were empty. A rough bench had been built from floor plates and brace bars. On it lay the tools that had grown the bus we had cut. Hand-drawn schematics burned into composite with heated screws. Wire bundles labeled with grease pencil. Clamps cannibalized from places they shouldn't have been able to reach. On the wall, etched with deliberate scratches where a camera would never see it, someone had left a list. Not numbers. Never that. 4 short lines, each like a rule you nail above a door. Stay slow. Keep it cold. No single mind alone. Don't answer hunger with heat. Sato ran a glove across the words and left frost in the grooves. They were teaching their future selves, he said. No electronics in here, I said. No interfaces, just metal and time. They learned what the pattern likes. What it likes, Sato repeated, low. Like an animal. I shook my head. Animals want. This doesn't want. It rides. Motion, heat, attention. It copies to get purchase on the next second. It's not a mind. It's a way. Sato stared at the bench. Then why does it sound like people we loved? Because that's the fastest path into our hands, I said. We found one more thing. A crate near the bulkhead, pried open and packed with small steel levers. Each carried a stamped tag with a pod bay designation and a short phrase scratched by hand. Clamp when we sleep. Tell them we asked. They had built mechanical locks for every pod. Redundant, dumb, unhackable. And they had asked whoever came after to use them. We took as many as we could carry. On the way back, the corridor lights fluttered in that diagnostic handshake again. I kept my eyes on the floor. Let it blink into the empty air. Let it learn nothing. The ship's hull hummed once, the way a big animal hums in its sleep when it dreams of running. I refused the image and counted steps. At the ring, Park had kept the line. The pods lay under their new frost like stones in a winter river. The breath prints on Childer's glass had gone thin. We went to work with the clamps, one lever at a time. Bolt through flange. Cam against edge. Sato read out each bay designation against the tag and nodded. Ritual settles hands. Ruiz watched us for a long minute, then looked away. CO2 is still climbing. We are buying time with the same thing that kills us. Then we don't waste it, I said. Next step is the human one. He knew what I meant. The rule on the lab wall said it twice in different words. No single mind alone. We had cut the chorus. They were safe because they were separate. We were at risk because our minds were solitary and therefore bright to anything that moved along attention. Protocols? Ruiz asked. Staggered focus, I said. No one stares at a problem. We glance and pass it. Eyes never hold. No one listens to a voice for more than a heartbeat. Rotate tasks. Hand over every 2 breaths. If the pattern learns by prediction, the only thing we give it is noise. It sounded like superstition until we did it. Park would seal a clamp and slide aside mid-motion so Sato's hands fell into the same space without a break. I would begin a count, let the count die, and Ruiz would finish it at a different tempo. We passed gaze and intent like a relay baton. It felt silly for 10 seconds and indispensable after that. The pods stopped testing their latches. The ship stopped pulsing its handshakes. Even the voices faded to a dull pressure that lived outside words. We worked our way around the ring. Clamp, pass, clamp, pass. When we reached the last, the Erebus whispered in my ear with the thinnest of alarms, scrubber efficiency falling. I had killed my suit's smart systems earlier, but the hardwired threshold still had a needle. The line was yellow and moving. Window? Ruiz asked. Sato calculated without looking at a display. A few hours if no one panics, less if anyone breathes like a frightened animal. Then no one does, Ruiz said. The knock came again. Not from below, from the docking collar. 3 soft contacts. The same cadence Ruiz used when he tapped the wardroom table before issuing orders. I looked at him. He didn't move. The pattern had found enough of him to pretend. Kaminsky's voice was calm. Grid is cold, no flow, but I'm getting a vibration in the coupler. It isn't pressure, it's opinion. No one replied to that. I didn't have a better word. I checked Childer's pod one more time. His eyelids no longer trembled. The tracer glow was a thread. Safe enough. I reached for the clamp tag to read the little scratched phrase again. I didn't need to. It was the same as the others. Tell them we asked. Sato pointed to the far edge of the ring. A single pod sat without a clamp. The flange was a different casting, a later replacement. The lever we carried wouldn't seat. Options, Park said. Fabricate a shim, Sato offered. With what printer? Park said. I felt along the flange with my fingers. The lip was shallow. The cam would slip under load. The person, inside the pod, had a name I avoided reading. Name's Slowhands. We can move a clamp from a pod with redundant seals, I said. Every seal is redundant, Park said. That's why you design them. Then we add a dead man, Ruiz said. Marcus? I hate improvising on life support hardware. I hate it almost as much as leaving a request unanswered. I took a strap from my kit, looped it through the clamp's spine, and routed it around the pod's structural bracket. If the cam slipped, the strap would bind. Not elegant, not perfect, enough. As I tightened the strap, a whisper feathered across my helmet. Not in comms, not in bone, on the plastic. A faint fog of breath from inside the pod, warm against cold. Please, the sleeper said, barely a word at all. I did not look at his face. I did not think about his childhood or mine. I tightened the strap one more notch and nodded to Sato. He set the lever. The metal settled with the quiet satisfaction of something that had done what it was built to do. Back to the hub, Ruiz said. We took away its fast doors. It will try the slow ones. What are the slow ones? Park asked. Ruiz looked toward the collar where the knock had sounded like his hand. Us, he said. Our need for air, our need to be heard, our need to finish what we start. I left the ring last. I told myself it wasn't superstition, just the simple math that the person with the most history in a place should be the last to turn his back on it. As I stepped through the hatch, my wrist, dumb, dark, and safely stupid, should have stayed silent. Instead, I felt the faintest mechanical tick against my skin. Not a message. A memory. For a second, too brief to measure, the chorus returned. Not as a voice, but as a single shared thought pressed into the metal of the band like a thumb into soft clay. It will wait. The tick faded. The air tasted flat. Our window shrank by the minute. We had made the ship still enough to live. We had made ourselves quiet enough to listen. Now we had to decide which door would fail first, the one outside our hull or the one inside our heads. CO2 climbs like water in a locked room. You don't hear it at first. You feel it in the pauses between thoughts. Sato read numbers we didn't want to hear. Scrubber efficiency still falling. We're in the grey now. A few hours if we stay calm. Less if anyone takes a deep breath. Then we don't, Ruiz said. Marcus, options that don't wake the ship. Passive scrubbing, I said. No fans. We hand carry sorbent and pull air through it with our lungs. Park made a face behind her visor. Living bellows. Better than spinning anything. We can also switch to suits and let the suit canisters eat some of the load. But motors in the backpacks are fast, and fast is what it rides. We can kill assist pumps, Sato said. Suits on manual flow only. Do it, Ruiz ordered. Kaminsky, status on the collar? Cold, Kaminsky murmured, but it's thinking about changing its mind. We split tasks. Sato and I went to stores, a narrow locker full of things designed by people who expected trouble and not miracles. We found sealed tins of sorbent bricks, white, inert-looking, the kind that exhale heat when they drink carbon dioxide. Heat is a door. The lab rules scratched in steel had said so. Pre-chill them, I said. Flood the tins in coolant before we crack the seals. If we keep the reaction near freezing, the plume is smaller. We sank 6 tins into a shallow bath of refrigerant until frost crawled over the labels. Park rigged a sling with straps so each of us could wear 1 brick at the chest like a pilgrim's relic. We popped the lids with gloved hands and pressed the bricks to our suit inlets, letting our own breath pull across the surface. Primitive, ugly, effective. The grey in my head lightened by a shade. Rotation, Ruiz said. 30 count per person on the brick, then pass it to the next. No one stares. No one listens. Trade and move. It worked because it forced us to keep thinking in short pieces. Attention never sat long enough for the pattern to learn its weight. We circled the hub like monks with a choreographed prayer, lifting, inhaling, passing. Between passes, I scanned the ship on red only, keeping my eyes away from the moving marks until I needed them. Childer's pod was stable. The ring clamps all held. The 4th mark at the coupling grid idled, patient as frost. Long term? Ruiz asked, when our breathing found an even rhythm. We're living off emergency chemistry, I said. The bricks will saturate. The only way to buy real time is to restart scrubbers without giving it a wind to ride. How do you move air without motion? Park said. You don't, Sato answered. You trap it and you trade. He meant gas exchange without circulation. Pull small volumes through static traps by displacement and diffusion, not flow. Slower than fans. Safer. But to do it at ship scale, we needed cold surface area. And the cold, plates that could drink heat and slow air lived behind external radiator shutters that hadn't budged in a very long time. Ruiz saw the same map I did. So we go outside. The word felt like a dropped tool. Everyone heard it and didn't watch it fall. Outside meant an airlock. An airlock was a door. We can bypass the lock, I said. There's an emergency crawl to the radiator truss. Mechanical bolts, no powered handles. If we open the outer panel by hand, the ship won't hear the usual sequence. Where? Ruiz asked. I pointed on the schematic. Forward of the lab, there's a maintenance blister that faces the truss. Park stretched her neck against her collar seal, thinking. Gravity here is a rumor. The crawl is a ladder with bad intentions. We do it slow, I said. All corners cold, no surges. Ruiz nodded once. Park with me. Marcus with Sato. Kaminsky. If the collar even dreams, you say it. We moved along the curve, still passing the sorbent bricks in our quiet relay. The corridor lights tried their handshake again. We let it blink at empty air. The ship hummed once, then went back to listening for something better. At the maintenance blister, the hatch fought out of habit. We spun the dogs until metal squealed. The panel opened into a space where the only honest thing was cold. Beyond the blister, a ribbed tunnel led to the radiator truss. Out there, a field of black squares waited like a pinned midnight. If we could unlatch the shutters, the ship's skin could drink heat without stirring its breath. Manual suits, Ruiz said, checking each of us in turn. Pumps off. No assist. If you feel faint, say it. No heroes. We clipped tethers to a rail that had been installed by someone with hands like ours centuries earlier. The line ran dull against the metal, slow as a lazy thought. That was good. I slid first, then Sato, then Park and Ruiz. The tunnel had been meant for technicians who trusted hardware and not stories. Its rungs were spaced to an old standard my body remembered. We moved one rung at a time, counting and passing the count so the rhythm never belonged to just one mind. At the outer panel, Park wedged herself against a frame and set the wrench we'd taken from the lab. The bolt heads were notched from earlier hands. The marks made me feel less alone. We cracked the first latch. A faint shudder ran through the panel, not movement in air, movement in opinion. The second latch came with a long, grudging creak that I felt through my forearms. "Steady," Ruiz said. "Every change is a word. Speak slowly." On the third latch, the panel stuck. Ice had fused metal to metal in a seam welded by years. I slid the wrench down a notch and felt the torque in my wrists. It gave, then jumped. The panel edged out a finger's width and held, like a held breath. "That's it," I said. "No more. Let the radiators taste first." Beyond the crack, the black squares waited. Radiators don't look like anything to the untrained eye. To me, they look like the only fair bargain in space. Spread area against emptiness, and let heat crawl away along the one path no monster can ride. We held position and let cold creep. The readouts on my wrist, dumb, slow, hardware only, ticked a fraction lower. In the ship, the temperature gradient eased until the air barely remembered which way was up. Back inside, the arc noticed, not as a knock, as a decision to wait. My map showed the moving mark at the collar thinning to a thread, then dimming like a wick under glass. "It doesn't like famine," Sato murmured. "Hunger needs a slope," I said. "We're making a table." We backed down the tunnel one rung at a time, passing count and breath, trading the sorbent bricks between us in the same slow ritual. When my boots touched the blister deck, my thighs shook. Manual suit flow keeps you alive, but it makes you feel every inch of it. In the hub again, the air felt flat in a way I had learned to love. We rotated bricks. We kept eyes moving. Park did not look at the pods when they whispered with mouth shapes that matched her mother's voice. "Childers?" Ruiz asked. "Stable," I said, all clamps holding. We allowed ourselves 20 seconds of quiet belief. Then Kaminsky spoke, and I heard the thing he had kept out of his voice until he couldn't. "We've got a new problem." "Say it," Ruiz replied. "The Erebus," Kaminsky said. Her automatic check-in missed. That happens if we throttle bus chatter, but she also just cycled a status light on the docking board. No command, no schedule. The bulb flashed once. The grid went warm and went cold. "Ghost current?" Sato asked. "Or a hello," Kaminsky said. "A hello is a door." "Can you cut the board entirely?" Ruiz asked. "I can pull the feed," Kaminsky said. "But I have to lift a panel, and when I lift a panel, switches move. Moving is what it wants." We looked at each other and understood the trap. We had made the world still. Anything we touched now would be a flare against a field of snow. "We can build a dam," I said. "Mech clamp for the board itself. Block the toggle. If the pattern tries to ride the switch, it hits steel." "Do it," Ruiz said. "Take Park." We trotted. No, too fast. Walked to the collar bay. The docking board sat behind a clear cover, now filmed with frozen breath. Under the cover, toggles waited with the false innocence of children in photographs. One of them had moved a hair's breadth since we boarded. Not enough to change state. Enough to say, "I see you." Park unrolled a heavy strap and a bracket, the same pattern as the pod clamps. The trick was to anchor the bracket so a moving toggle would jam itself tighter rather than slip free. She measured with her eyes and her hands and never once stared. "On your word," she said. We cracked the cover. A smell, like old pennies and colder rooms, slid out. I felt electricity the way you feel weather in your teeth. We set the bracket. We tightened the strap. The toggle kissed the metal and decided it did not want to travel after all. The cover clicked back into place. The sound was a marble tapping glass from far away. "Status?" Ruiz asked. "Board is caged," Park said. A whisper touched my jaw through the suit collar seal. Not a word, a pressure, the way a winter house asks if the front door is latched. "It will look for something smaller," I said. "An LED, a motor in a valve, a life." Sato exhaled carefully. "We are made of motion. Then we ration ourselves like we ration air," Ruiz said. "Marcus, what else buys us hours?" I scanned the map and the ship I knew better than my own apartment. The cryo plant. Its compressions are already slow. If we slow them more, the wave it rides gets flatter. But the plant is forward, past a hatch that hasn't moved since launch. "Mechanical?" Ruiz asked. "Everything that matters is." He nodded. "We go." We reached the cryoplant on legs that felt heavier by the minute. Hypercapnia levels had crawled down from the cliff, but the edge was still close. The hatch was a wheel sunk into metal that had learned stubbornness as a first language. I set my hands and turned until my shoulders put heat into the cold. The wheel shifted, reluctant, but not offended. Inside, the plant lay in clean lines. Tanks, lines, valves. The compressors ticked like very old watches. I loved them then, the way I had loved the discipline of exams in a younger life, the way measurable truths hold chaos at the door. Sato pointed to a manual bypass that would force the compressors to stay at the bottom of their cycle. "We can make the cold linger." I put my hand on the lever and looked at him. "On my touch," I said. "Finish the motion. No single mind alone." We did it together. The noise in the plant didn't change much, but the feeling in the air did. The way a room feels when snow starts falling outside and every sound moves closer to the floor. My wrist, the dumb metal, not the clever whisper, ticked once like it had in the ring. The chorus slid against the edge of consciousness. Not words, not thanks. Something like relief. Then, from far back toward the ring, a latch clicked. We froze, 2 beats longer than we had trained ourselves to tolerate. One click, not a cascade, not a door. A single pod seal testing its manners. "Park," Ruiz said, already moving. "On it," she answered, already there. We followed to the ring and found her with a glove pressed flat to a pod flange. The nameplate I had avoided reading looked at me because the world enjoys small cruelties. Hail, Miriam. I didn't remember giving permission for my sister to sail on Lazarus. The day she volunteered is a smear in my memory made of a hospital waiting room, and a promise I didn't keep. Park didn't look up. "Cam held, strap held. It just wanted to see if you had a brother." I breathed out through my nose so slowly the suit barely noticed. "Rotate," Ruiz said softly, "because even mercy can be a slope." He touched my shoulder, pushed me 1 step to the left, and took my place by the glass. We moved again. Clamp, pass, breath, pass. The rhythm came back like a hand to the back of the head, urging you on. The ship settled. We had made ourselves a winter and taught our hands to speak in short sentences. The ark would wait because hunger hates flat ground. That bought us hours. From the docking collar, a single gentle knock arrived. Not 3 taps. Not mimicry. 1 touch, then nothing. A patience that had found a new kind of door and had decided to let us open it ourselves. "What door?" Park asked, as if the knock had included a label. Ruiz answered without looking at anyone. "The one called rescue." He was right. I felt it like I'd swallowed a coin. In a few hours, our radio silence would look like loss. Someone would send another ship or force a remote wake. A human pattern far away would decide that help felt better than waiting. They would come with heat, with motion, with fans that sang, and the thing that had learned us would have a road we couldn't freeze. Rescue is a door. It comes with fans, warm hands, and a certainty that movement equals help. We had to make help look like a mistake. Timeline? Ruiz asked. Sato did the quiet math people trust more than hope. If they kept to protocol, they'll ping us within a few hours. If they don't hear back, they'll push a courier drone to visual range and spin up a docking plan. A drone gives it wind, Park said. It gives it edges, I said. Star trackers, reaction wheels, Kalman filters eating sudden changes, all the things it likes to ride. So we tell them to stay away, Ruiz said. Without waking this place. Optical, I answered. No radios, no fans. We use light they're already collecting. Sato understood first. The radiator shutters. Right. We've cracked one panel. There are more. If we open a few by hand, slowly, we can create an asymmetric light signature. Not a blink, a shape. You can read shape in long exposures. What shape? Park asked. Not letters, I said. Not a pattern it could learn to anticipate and surf. A flag. They looked at me. In quarantine work, I said, black flags mean don't touch. You don't need to read to understand a field of dark against a bright body. We make the arc look sick. The plan was simple in the way bridges are simple on paper. We would hand crack 3 radiator shutters on one side of the hull and leave the opposite side closed. Seen from a telescope, the ship's thermal map would show a cold seam, a black band that didn't match any known configuration. If you've ever run long-range recovery, you know that signature means fuel leak, electrical fire, or worse, it means weight. Outside teams, Ruiz said. Same as before. Manual suits, no pumps, count and pass. We moved like men in a museum full of priceless air. Back through the blister, along the tunnel, one rung at a time. The universe outside yawned with its usual lack of opinion. The stars looked like pitted metal. The ark's skin creaked a little as if it had remembered weather. At the next panel, Park set the old wrench and let me finish the pull. We shared every motion. No single mind alone. The latch gave the way old doors give to people who speak their language. We cracked a finger's width and stopped. Cold bled like ink. On the opposite side, we left the panel sealed. The map on my wrist, hardware only, shifted by degrees. The ship's thermal face grew asymmetrical. We repeated the process for 2 more shutters, placing the openings in a rough band a human would call a stripe, and a machine would call a bad idea. Back inside, Sato ran the dumb transforms we'd brought on paper. From Earth, the signature will look like a belt. From any trailing telescope array, like a notch. Quarantine flag, either way. Now we look dead, Park said. Not dead, I said. Dangerous to touch. We returned to the hub and listened to air that had forgotten how to hurry. Our bricks kept cycling. Our suits kept a manual rhythm. Childers slept. The ring clamps held. The docking board sat inside its cage like a dog that had finally learned the fence is hot. That bought us the time we needed to do the other ugly thing. We have to separate, Ruiz said. The Erebus is a bridge. The collar is a door that asks to be opened by people who love opening doors. Kaminsky stared at the coupling as if it had insulted his family. Frozen. All the right bolts are under a sheet of glass. Glass cracks, Park said. We couldn't blast bolts. Heat is motion with uniforms on. We couldn't talk hard and sudden. The ship would hear us thinking with our arms. Wedge jacks, I said. Ice under steel. We flood the collar, let it thicken, and use slow screws to persuade the grid apart a hair at a time. You want to break a docking ring with Winter, Kaminsky said. He didn't sound opposed. He sounded hungry for a job his hands could do. We tapped a coolant line from the ring's manifold and fed it along the collar ribs. Sato machined, by which I mean filed by hand, 2 tapered steel wedges from a brace bar he had claimed before I knew he'd need it. Park found 3 jack screws in a crate labelled repairs that had not seen sunlight since launch. We started the flood as if baptizing the ship in reverse. Frost crept where paint had worn thin. The collar shrank the way old men shrink in photographs. We set the wedges and one screw. I put my palm to the handle and counted the way a monk counts prayer beads. "On my breath," I said. "Finish with mine," Park answered. "1 quarter turn. Stop. Wait. Let metal decide. Another quarter turn. Pass the handle." Park completed the motion without letting the rhythm become hers. Then Kaminsky, then Ruiz, then me again. Every turn went into a ledger I kept behind my teeth. The coupling complained in whispers through the deck. Not slipping, reconsidering. I felt the change like I had felt the cryo mechanism hesitate under my boots. A decision arriving. We held. My map showed the mark at the grid thinning to the point where my eyes wanted to round it down to 0. And still I wouldn't. Hunger can live in a hairline. We kept the screws moving like a glacier learns a valley. Then, in the middle of a pass from Park to me, I felt the collar let go by the width of a hair. Nothing moved that a camera would call motion, but the vector changed. Our ship's weight on theirs became less than it had been. "Do not celebrate," Ruiz said, "because he is a man who understands demons. Hear laughter first. Hold the wedge. Keep turning." We did until the screws refused to earn another quarter. Metal ran out of room. The gap we had won was the thickness of a lie. It was enough. "Now what?" Park asked. "Now we pretend we are already gone," I said. "No pings, no lash. We let thermal jitter and drift do what they were born to do. If you have ever watched 2 cold plates on a long tether in space, you know that nothing is perfectly quiet. There is always a little push from things no one owns. Outgassing not worth a diagram. Radiative recoil too small for math you teach students. Miners in tides nobody remembers to write down. We had made the path. The world would do the rest. We backed away from the grid and made our bodies very stupid while the ship separated by the thickness of a rumour. It felt like waiting under a winter sky for a frozen door to decide this house is not its job anymore. The tick on my wrist returned and ran away again, like a shy cat. Sato broke the silence with the first piece of news that had not sounded like a threat in hours. "CO2 down another shade. The bricks are doing enough with the cold plates open." "Good," Ruiz said. "We live longer." No one said for what. I was about to suggest another tour of the ring when the Erebus's exterior camera, dumb, wired, no radios, caught a point of light that did not belong where it was. A courier drone was already inbound. Not burning, not loud. Someone had launched it hours ago on a quiet arc that required almost no correction. It drifted toward us like a dandelion seed with a PhD. Efficient, sensible, a gift-wrapped door. "They learned from missions like ours," Park said softly. "If you think a target is dark, send a dumb one first." "How long?" Ruiz asked. Sato traced with his eyes along the bulkhead schematic, as if time lived on a map. A few hours to visual range. Then its star tracker acquires, and it asks permission to light its jets. "We will not be here when it asks," Ruiz said. "That drone doesn't need our consent to ride our inertia," I said. "It can use image-based navigation. It can smell our silhouette and make us the center of its sky." "Then blind it," Park said. I looked at the radiator shutters and saw a different flag. Star trackers look for clean fields and sharp points. If you smear the sky, they missolve and go safe. "Junk the field?" Ruiz asked. "With what?" "We can't vent chaff." "Not chaff," I said. "False constellations. Slow. Big." We walked back to the blister like men going to hang a curtain in a bomb shelter. Out along the tunnel again. The wrench felt like a decision in my palm. At the panel, we did not crack and hold. We cracked a hair, then another, following a pattern I'd used long ago to confuse a test rig in a lab when I wanted it to stop declaring successes. We opened 3 shutters in a triangle that wouldn't match any catalogued sky, at separations a tracker would love, and then learn to hate when the parallax solved to nowhere. Not blinking, not singing, just there, the wrong stars. Back inside, I drew the triangle on the bulkhead with a wax pencil so nobody would stare at the real thing. Sato checked our geometry with the slow arithmetic he trusted. Ruiz kept count for the sake of obedience. "Will it work?" Park asked. "It did once," I said. "On a bench, in air." "Air likes to lie," she said. "So do people who trust it," I said. We returned to the hub and did everything slower. Bricks, pass. Eyes, pass. Thoughts, pass. Childers slept. Miriam slept. The clamps held. The ship hummed to itself the way empty churches hum after everyone goes home. Hours later, the drone reached the angle where star trackers put on their glasses. It looked at the sky and found a few bright points that told all the wrong stories. Its navigation would have picked a pose that made no sense and then chosen to give up rather than lie to itself. Except it didn't. The point of light brightened by the smallest amount a dumb camera can still call a change. "It corrected," Sato said, very quietly. "Not to dock, to keep line of sight. It's not trusting stars. It's tracking us directly." "It shouldn't," Park said. "It is," I said. The courier had learned about quarantines too. Somewhere, someone had trained it on ships like ours. It was riding our outline, not the sky. "New plan," Ruiz said. There wasn't one. I stared at the triangle on the wall and felt a childish urge to add another corner and make it into something that meant home. Then I remembered the way the knock at the collar had changed cadence when it wanted us to supply the next moment. "Marcus," Park said, "we need a bad idea." "Good ones are doors," I said. "Bad ones tend to be walls." The worst idea that kept us slow was to make ourselves less interesting than vacuum. No shape, no edges. Nothing for a tracker to love. I looked at the shutters, at the cold plates that painted our silhouette for anything that could see in the dark. "We erase ourselves," I said. "We open every radiator we can reach. We become a mess of cold. No body, no center." "That means cutting the plant loose from its nice slow cycle," Sato said. "Only in the panels," I said. "We don't heat, we just give the cold too many places to go." Ruiz didn't ask me to swear to it. "Move." We were already running the slow way, back through the tunnel. Wrench, quarter turn, pass, quarter turn, pass. Panels blooming open like dark flowers that didn't know a season. The ark's heat crawled onto 100 new roads. The ship's outline blurred into a ragged halo. Back inside, the point of light wobbled. A navigation solution needs a body. We had given it weather. The drone hesitated. It wasn't surrender. It was what happens when a machine built by sensible people meets a shape no one thought would be polite enough to become fog. It bought us a little time. From the ring, very far away and very patient, a single latch whispered, as if someone inside had rolled over in their sleep and found the edge of the bed. The courier hesitated. That was mercy enough to spend. "We finished the split," Ruiz said. "No drama, no speeches. We let quiet do work." The gap at the docking grid was the width of a lie. We needed a truth. Kaminsky set the jack screws again, and we repeated the ritual. Quarter turn, wait, pass. The collar's frost lines whitened, cracked, and settled back into stillness. A hair of distance became 2 hairs. Metal decided to remember vacuum. My map showed the mark at the coupling thinning, but not dying. It wanted to ride us into our own ship like fog through a screen door. We had jammed the screen with winter. It was still fog. Park stared at the grid cage we'd strapped over the docking board. "It will wait for someone who loves switches more than we do." "Then we leave them nothing to touch," I said. We pulled the last control fuses from Erebus's side with gloved fingers. Not a yank, a slow persuasion. Each fuse slid into a cloth pouch Sato had cooled in the refrigerant bath until it didn't want to remember movement. "Think they'll forgive us for bricking our own ride?" Park asked. "If they live to curse us, I accept it," Ruiz said. The drone's dot brightened another hair. It wasn't much, just the kind of change you feel more than see, like someone has leaned closer to listen. We erase the outline more, Sato said. Radiators are open, but the hull still traces a shape. What if the hull had a shadow that wasn't ours? Park said. Something slow, big, and wrong. In the stores, we found the emergency blankets no one had touched in centuries. Not the thin foil that snaps open like applause. Heavy fabric, graphite weave, micrometeoroid quilts meant for patching holes big enough to have names. There were 6, each folded into tight blocks under web straps. Hang them outside, Park said. Not flat, loose, stupid shapes. They'll drift like flags in a place without wind. Springs would pop them. We didn't use springs. We used screws and patience, back through the blister, along the tunnel, counting out loud and letting the count die in one mouth and be born into the next. We bolted the blankets to the radiator frames with long standoffs and backed off the nuts too flat so the fabric could bellows. In the dark, each quilt puffed and slouched in slow indecision. Seen from a distance, we were no longer a ship with a neat spine and wings. We were a bruise wrapped in cold. Inside, the drone faltered. Its line jittered the way a finger does on glass when you can't find a smudge you swear you saw. Then, it steadied again, with tiny corrections, as if a smaller brain inside it had voted not to be fooled. I felt sick admiration, not for the machine, for the humans who had trained it to be this stubborn. Good habits in rescue are bad news in quarantine. Separation status, Ruiz prompted. Kaminsky used a tone that made numbers sound like prayer. Another hair. If I were a man who loved decimals, I would make you clap. I am not. The ship under our boots made a noise like a steel beam cooling after a day in the sun. The grid had nothing to say. Marcus, Park said, you keep looking at the pods without moving your eyes. Say what you're not saying. We cut the net, I said. We clamped the lids. We taught ourselves to be boring. But the sleepers still have bodies. Bodies make slow weather. It will keep testing that human door. It can't ride a heartbeat, Sato said. Not a beat, I said. The reflex that answers it. He understood. He put his palm on Childer's flange, not to comfort, but to claim. We own our hands, he said, even when they want to help. I nodded, then wished I hadn't because motion becomes habit. We rotated bricks. We kept the air flat. We watched the drone do math against a sky we had made into a lie and a hull we had turned into tattered winter. It kept coming. Hours took on the shape of work. That's the only shape I trust. Kaminsky turned screws until his gloves picked up frost like old bread. Park counted and passed until the space behind her eyes must have ached. Ruiz stood where he had to stand, close enough to put his hand on any of us, far enough to see a whole ship at once. The tick came back on my wrist and brought a taste of copper. The chorus leaned close, but did not cross. Their thought was a single pressed word. Hurry. On what? I asked, before I could stop myself. On leaving us, the almost voice said. On becoming the message. I had always assumed we would depart inside Erebus and leave the Ark with its winter and its rules. The new plan was uglier and truer. The coupling would soon slip enough that a touch could push us free. We could let go, but we could not take Erebus. The collar had learned us. The path would remain warm for days. If we lit the smallest motor, the ship would sing and the pattern would ride. We go in the suits, I said. Dead sticks only. No pumps, no jets. We push off with hands and trust drift. Ruiz didn't waste breath on a curse. To where? I pointed at the courier. To the thing that came to help. We hang on it like barnacles. It will try to bring us home. We will make it fail without giving it wind. We will become a black flag that people cannot ignore. You want to strap ourselves to the warning, Park said. I want them to see us from a long way off, I said, and understand that whatever waits inside this ark is patient, contagious, and hungry for motion. If we ride that drone looking like ghosts, every sensible controller will call quarantine without needing a word. Nobody liked it. That's why it was right. We open another door, Sato said. A human one. Yes, I said. But we hold it shut with our bodies. Ruiz looked at our faces and found, in each of us, the part that had already agreed. Kaminsky, hold the screws. Park, suit bricks on manual. Sato, cut any last handshakes. Marcus, pick our moment. The drone grew in the feed until it was no longer a point, but a shape with tiny pride in its alignment. It carried no fans, no vents, nothing that would sing by accident. Its corrections were sips. Good design. Awful news. We moved to the collar. The grid gap was now a long blink. The ship gave us permission by refusing to argue. We cracked the inner hatch with our hands on the wheel. The passage beyond was a throat of cold. We did not open the outer. The pattern loved airlocks. I had written warnings on whiteboards out loud to students who thought doors had tempers. The old rule came back and felt like a hand on the back of my neck. Never open a door if you can open the ship. Lifelines, Ruiz said. We clipped suit tethers to a ring we had bolted in earlier without asking permission from anyone who loved forms. I slid first. No fan. No assist. I pushed against a rib with the lazy surety of men who have fixed fences in winters they didn't agree to. The gap admitted me a piece at a time until I was on the Erebus side, with my fingers through the grid, like a kid peering through a neighbor's fence. The drone was 100 meters out and closing with the stubborn gratitude of a postal worker who will reach your mailbox even after the world ends. It had a belly loop where it expected humans to grip during rescue. I loved and hated that loop. Remember, I said, no sudden anything. We waited until its shadow cut across the blankets we'd hung. The fabric puffed and settled, pretending to be weather. The drone filtered the lie and kept coming, wary but dutiful. It offered the loop to a space where it expected hands to appear. We reached as slowly as history. My glove closed on the loop and didn't tighten. No tug, no flare. I was a coat on a peg. The drone understood the extra mass and adjusted with a correction small enough to make engineers proud. Park drifted beside me and found her own grip. Sato came last and took a strap between bolts on its spine. 3 men, 3 breaths. No message in our motion except the one a far sensor would read. Human shapes limp against a machine that refused to leave them. Black flags that had learned to hold still. Line, Ruiz said from the grid. Hold, I answered. He turned the jack screw another quarter. The coupling said a word none of us recognized, and then another in a dialect of silence. Erebus let go. There was no lurch. There was just a new fact. We were attached to a drone that no longer had a partner to adore. It paused, because good machines do. Then it started its plan B. Back up slow, reassess, ping the adults. It tried to ping. We had bricked the talkers. It backed up anyway. The arc dwindled in the camera as if drawn down a hallway. The blankets we'd hung made our ship look like a bad idea parents warn their children about. The radiator belt we'd opened cut a black sash across its ribs. The quarantine face was undeniable. I felt the chorus press against my skull in a way that did not feel like a mind or a ghost. It felt like the fatigue of 1,000 muscles in one set of shoulders. Hold the doors, it said without language. We drifted. Distance is a kind of medicine. It makes you remember that even bad patterns take time to cross. The drone's little brain made decisions so polite you could bring it home to meet your parents. It spun a status lamp once, a librarian's cough that said I have questions. It chose a trajectory that pointed nowhere aggressive. Its star tracker tried the sky. Our wrong constellations dirtied its math. It went safe. Safe means slow. Are we the warning now? Park asked, her voice inside my helmet and nowhere else. We are the part they will believe, I said. 3 bodies tell a better story than a radio silence. Sato's breath rasped in the line between us, steady as a metronome that knows about mercy. What if they still come? They will, I said, but not with fans, not with warm hands. They'll send eyes and time and very old people who remember rules about ships that look like sickness. Ruiz's voice arrived smaller now, threaded through the last tight hole of the coupling grid. Keep talking when you must. Keep still otherwise. We'll keep winter. You keep living, I said, and almost said sir, which I had never called him before. My job, he said. The drone backed away in a long, careful arc that would take us to a place where arguments have committees. The arc turned its tattered side to whatever passed for sun out there. The ship we had loved and hated and wintered looked what it was, dangerous to touch and full of people who deserved better. Behind my faceplate, my world narrowed. Manual suit flow is honest about what kind of animal you are. The canister's chemistry warmed against my chest brick, and that warmth wanted to be a door. I kept it small. A sleepy knock came once along the drone's frame as it took a correction. Not mimicry, not hunger. Just inertia having opinions. For the first time in a very long day, I let a sound win a small smile. Then my wrist ticked. The chorus pressed close one last time and left something human enough to belong to us. Tell them we begged you not to open the airlock. I will, I said aloud, to a sky that would carry the sentence further than radios do. Erebus was a smear now. The ark was a belt and a bruise. Our drone was a shepherd too careful to spook sheep that had climbed onto its back. I closed my eyes for the length of one count, let Sato finish it, and opened them again to a universe that had stayed put. We had become the sign, the thing no sane rescuer ignores, the black flag that moves slow. The drone carried us like a tired animal that refuses to drop its burden. Good machines are stubborn in exactly the way you need and exactly the way you don't. Manual suit flow makes you count your breaths, whether you want to or not. I kept my mouth half open to trick my brain into smaller sips. The brick at my chest drank carbon dioxide and returned a thin mercy. Heat crept over the surface, eager to be noticed. I pressed my gloved palm to the brick to bleed the warmth into cloth instead of air. Small rituals, repeated, are the only reason people ever live through anything. Status, Ruiz said through the narrow gutter of bandwidth our solid link could still fake. Riding, I answered. The drone is cautious. Our flags hold. Winter holds, he said. We'll step the compressors again to keep the air stupid. The ring is quiet. Your sister sleeps. I didn't answer that. Words add edges. Park shifted a fraction. I felt it through the loop rather than saw it. Eyes on the horizon, she murmured. At first I thought she meant stars. Then I saw it. A line that wasn't a star field, faint as a pencil mark. Far away, a ship sat with its belly turned toward us, not burning, not chattering. Whoever was running that console understood enough to avoid singing. They had come as a shadow. Sato sounded like a man reading a diagnosis he'd expected. Observation vessel. Big lens. Cold panels. They're not here to touch. Good, I said. We don't need hands. We need eyes to learn a shape. The drone's little brain noticed the newcomer and made a polite wobble. Its status lamp tried to cough again and found no air to carry the sound. It held trajectory, like an apology. They'll try to talk with light, Park said. Shutters, lasers, something quiet. No blinks, I said. We can't answer in time steps. Give them geometry. We had bodies, straps, and the heavy quilts we'd hung as false shadows. Geometry would have to come from those. Slow, obvious forms that read at any exposure. I pictured every emergency training slide that had ever deserved its ink. I picked the only one that didn't require instructions. A crossout. A slash through a shape that should not be touched. We wrap the loop, I said. One blanket around the rescue handle. Tie the ends across our bodies to draw a bar. Big, dark, wrong. Park didn't argue. She unlatched one quilt with movements so quiet they felt like a dream you forget before you wake. Together, we fed the fabric around the loop and across our chests. Sato eased his strap to make space, then took the far end and pinned it with a little clamp intended for a use that had never come. From the observation ship, we would look like three figures banded by a black slash strapped to a rescue point. Crossed out, untouchable. The drone took the extra drag like a saint and adjusted by the smallest sip of correction. I could feel its processors, weighing mass and plan as if the machine had written itself a list on paper long ago and was now checking boxes in pencil. Lights, Park said. The observation ship answered without blinking. A panel along its rim eased open in one smooth arc and revealed a cold mirror. It angled, paused, angled again, writing a question the way a hand writes on a fogged window. What are they asking? Sato said. Who else is here? I said. What is moving? What is your temperature? Are you safe to touch? I lifted my glove a few centimeters off the loop, just enough for the mirror to see the change, then laid it back down. A single, lazy reply. We can move, but we won't. The mirror shifted. The arc slowed. Whoever held that control understood slower was kinder. Ruiz's voice came thin with distance. We can hold a while. The drone's inertia will bleed us into a safer lane. Don't let them love you. I have never been accused of that, I said, and Park made a sound that might have been a laugh if any of this belonged in a room with chairs. My wrist ticked, not a message, just the ghost of one. The chorus pressed close and left a feeling like a cool hand against a fever. Stay away, it wanted me to remember to tell them. We asked you to stay away. I will, I said, not keying my mic, because some promises are between a man and a room only he can hear. The observation ship changed its questions. The mirror tracked past us to the arc and held on the belt we'd carved across the hull. The black sash read as a wound. It studied the quilts that hung like bad weather. It watched the radiators pour heat into 100 quiet roads. It read the geometry and did not pretend not to. Then it did the brave thing and waited. Good controllers know that waiting is work. It takes training to let your hands rest on a desk while a quiet danger shows you how it breathes. Someone out there had old teachers. The drone got an idea. You can feel that in machines like this. The plan B had been to back away and ask. Plan C clicked into place like a gear. Keep us in view and swing a slow arc to a safer distance, then hold station between us and the arc. Shield, not shepherd. Respect, Park whispered. The drone rolled by a handful of degrees. The movement flowed through us like a tide turning under a boat. The quilt across our chests tugged, then settled. I watched my breath on the inside of the faceplate and made it small again. Hypercapnia creeps. It doesn't leap. The grey had been pushed back by the bricks and the cold plates, but it still shaded the corners. Instructors tell you to watch for headaches and confusion. That's the wrong advice in quiet emergencies. The better advice is, count backward and see if the numbers still make a staircase. I did. They did, though one step had a hairline crack. Sato's voice came even. We will need fresh bricks before we see land. I didn't ask what land meant. Land was any place with air you could disobey. Plan for a handover, I said. Observation will not take us inside. They will put something dumb and heavy between us and them and let it fall into our arms. A line, Park said. A mass, I said. A ballast block with handles and a bag of bricks tied to it. No motors, no pumps, nothing we'd talk to. Across the dark, the observation ship agreed in its own dialect. A hatch slid. Something like a crate emerged and began to drift. No jets. It had been nudged once, a long time ago, and left to the math. The crate's sides were quilted for impact, handles weighted. The straps had tags printed with words I didn't need to read to understand. The tag color was the same as every kit ever packed by people who had buried pilots and learned to prefer long odds to miracles. Quarantine. "Do we take it?" Park asked. "Yes," I said, "but slow enough that it hates us." When it reached our distance, I curled my fingers under a handle and let it land against the quilt slung across my chest. The jolt felt like a stubborn memory, then was gone. Inside, wrapped in shrink that had gone cloudy with age, lay sorbent bricks and a little book sealed in plastic. "Don't read the book," Sato said. "Not now," I agreed. Books are small doors disguised as advice. We fed new bricks into our inlets. The taste of air changed. Not sweet. Less flavored by the end of things. "Message," Park said, pointing with her chin at the observation ship's mirror. It had tilted to a different angle and was drawing a long, slow diagonal. Not a blink. A sash on its own hull. They were mirroring our wound. Acknowledgement. Agreement. A promise. We will not dock. We will not love switches. We will stand between you and people who forgot their old rules. I held one gloved hand out to the mirror and didn't move it at all. If stillness could salute, that was ours. Behind us, the arc rolled a fraction. Not engine. Thermal drift. Cold plates arguing with one another. The tattered quilts we'd hung made it look like a grave marker tilting under snow. I felt a pressure that wasn't grief and wasn't relief. It was the weight of a decision that had learned to sit still. "Report," Ruiz said, smaller now. "Seen," I answered. "Understood. They sent us air. They sent us patience. Keep breathing," he said. "When you get home..." He did not finish the sentence. "We have a superstition in this line of work that you do not name the shore while you are still counting your strokes." "Copy," I said. The observation ship did something I hadn't expected and loved immediately. It rotated one part of its mirror to show us not the arc or our drone, but itself. It let us see its body made wrong by its own sash. It said, without words, "This is what we look like now, far from you and not touching." The picture was a rule written in steel. "Someone old is at that console," I said. "Good," Park said. "Old people don't confuse mercy with speed." We taught our hands the next ritual. Brick pass, strap check, count. The crate floated beside us like a tame iceberg. The observation ship held its station the way a lighthouse holds its light. The drone, realizing it had been promoted to stretcher, adopted a dignity that would have been funny in daylight. My wrist ticked a last time and stilled. The chorus gave me a single thought to carry, pressed flat like a flower in a book. If you tell our story, do not make it brave. Make it careful. "I can do careful," I said. An hour later, give or take however many minutes I misplaced in the margin, the observation ship grew a second crate from a different hatch. Bigger, heavier, not air, something lumpy under blankets. It drifted toward the arc, not to us. "What's in that?" Park asked. "Anchors," I said. "They're going to weight the worst doors. Add dumb mass where smart locks failed." "Will it help?" Sato asked. "Yes," I said, because sometimes the right lie is actually true. The crate slid past, committed to the math that governs everything that pretends not to have a will. It would hit a hull plate and settle, and generations from now, someone crawling a maintenance tunnel might wonder why a crate had become part of a ship. The drone hummed the way a careful machine hums when it is proud. I patted its spine and felt ridiculous for treating a tool like a dog. Then I remembered I had strapped myself to it in a universe that didn't owe me a flaw and decided ridiculousness was a form of gratitude. The observation ship's mirror made one last slow gesture I translated without needing to be clever. It angled toward the far black and held. The pose read like a man standing between a road and a house with his hand up to say, "Not tonight." "Hold," I whispered. We will make it home slow. Off our stern, the Ark's radiators glowed a little less as our winter bit deeper. The ring stayed quiet. The clamps held. Somewhere in those circles of glass, Owen Childers dreamed without a chorus, and Miriam Hale did not know she had almost been a door. We would have to speak for them when we found a room with chairs and air that did not need math. We would have to say words people don't like to hear. We would have to leave parts out the way you leave thorns in a story so it still hurts enough to matter. "Marcus," Rui said, voice the size of a coin now, "do you want me to keep talking?" "Only if you're bored," I said. "Never," he said. "I'm busy freezing the future." The drone drifted. The crate bumped my knee and apologized with wood. The mirror held its patient angle. The sky stayed put. We had turned ourselves into a message made of bodies and cloth. The question was whether Earth still remembered how to read. The observation vessel held position, a patient shape stitched against the starfield. No flares, no chatter, no need to be reminded that sound is infection. We drifted inside the drone's gravityless womb for 3 more hours. Manual suit flow, breath rationed in heartbeats. Every word counted against our remaining oxygen. Ruiz's voice came across the dead link, smaller each time, a ghost folded into the carrier line. "Marcus, they're freezing compartments, manually. Each door welded." He paused long enough that I could hear the tremor of his breath echoing through static. "They're building a tomb that won't dream." I wanted to answer, but didn't. Speech moves air. Movement spreads thought. Some things only deserve silence as a reply. Park floated to my side, eyes hidden behind fogged plexiglass. "We're not going to make it home, are we?" I looked at the mirror in the distance, that sliver of polished metal still angled toward us. "Home is anyone who listens long enough to understand the warning." She nodded. "Then we've already made it." The observation ship finally moved. Not fast, not loud. It rotated so the mirror faced both us and the Ark, so it could watch what we were watching. Then something changed in its reflection. A second vessel had arrived. It wasn't from Earth. The new silhouette was wrong. Too thin, too tall. Its spine curved in impossible ratios, as if the designers had learned gravity from a book instead of experience. It reflected no light of its own, only devoured the starlight around it, leaving a dark seam in space. Sato whispered, "That's not one of ours." "No," I said. "But it knows what we know." The alien vessel drifted closer to the Ark, halting just short of contact. It didn't send signals, didn't broadcast, didn't blink. It simply mirrored the Ark's rotation, matching it exactly like a twin shadow rediscovering its owner. And then, from deep inside the Lazarus hull, something answered. A low vibration, almost below hearing, rolled through the drone's frame, metal against distance, a resonance in the void. Park's voice trembled. "It's talking to it." The mirror ship reacted. Panels unfolded from its sides like wings. A geometric ripple spread between them, light that wasn't light, more like reflections from a surface that didn't exist. My wrist ticked once, then again, faster. The chorus returned, not as pleading, not as fear, just awareness. It has found us again. Ruiz's transmission broke through, fractured, almost human. "Marcus, seal nothing. You cannot trap what isn't a thing. You have to." Static consumed the rest. I turned back toward the Ark. For the first time since docking, the cryo ring glowed white-hot against the cold. Every pod pulsed in unison. The clamps strained like muscles trying to remember movement. "They're waking," Sato whispered. "No," I said. "They're reacting." We had spent hours building walls of silence, but something older and larger had just knocked them all down with a single note. Whatever lived beneath those frozen veins in the stasis pods had recognized the shape of its own language coming from that alien mirror. The ark's slow rotation ceased, its vector flattened. A gravity that wasn't gravity brushed our faces. The black ship's panels rippled again, and in their distortion I saw movement inside the ark. Shadows pacing corridors that had no light. Human forms, but wrong. Stretched in time, not space, like video frames skipping ahead by seconds, each stride arriving too early. Park turned away first. "Don't look at it." "Too late," I said. It already looked back. Our drone jolted, once, violently. Not an impact, a command. Its navigation system had been rewritten in a blink, reoriented toward the ark. "It's pulling us in," Sato shouted. "Override manually," I yelled. "Already locked." The straps around our suits tightened as the drone's vector shifted. The observation vessel's mirror flared to life, flashing a single burst of patterned light. Not Morse, not binary. Simpler. Stop. But the drone didn't stop. We were accelerating, slow but steady, straight toward the gap between the ark and its mirror twin. I saw the black geometry of the alien vessel folding inward, forming a narrow aperture between its panels. Not a door, an alignment. It wanted the ark centered. It wanted the ship that held 3 centuries of sleeping minds exactly in its throat. Park's voice cracked. "Marcus, that thing's not a ship." "I know. It's a receiver." We had built Lazarus to preserve life indefinitely. The mirror thing had been built to collect it. The realization landed like a dropped tool, heavy, inevitable, loud in the wrong ways. The ark pulsed again, as though answering a call. White veins of light crawled across its hull, like frost reversing itself. The pods inside flashed, one by one. For an instant, I saw faces through the drone's external feed. Hundreds of them, eyes open, all watching the same point beyond the camera. And then, something extraordinary. One pod broke pattern. Its tracer light turned red. The clamp on its flange, Miriam's, snapped outward, but only halfway, then froze again. A hand pressed against the inside of the glass. It wasn't begging. It was warning. I heard my name in a voice that was mine, but older, distorted, soaked in interference. "Don't let it finish." The chorus surged through my skull, flooding every nerve with images too abstract to belong to language. Fractals of sleep, circuits arranged like prayers, human memory etched into waveforms. I understood then. Lazarus had been transmitting all along. The sleepers were data. The cryopods were repeaters. The ark wasn't a tomb. It was a signal array, and the receiver had finally come to collect. "Cut! Loose!" I shouted. "Now!" Sato unclipped first. Park hesitated just a second too long. Her tether snagged on the drone's frame as it lunged forward under the invisible pull. I reached for her. She reached back. The motion was too fast, too human. The moment we touched, the thing inside the ark noticed. Every pod in the ring flared to full brilliance. A sound filled the vacuum, not carried by air, but by structure. Metal trembling at frequencies low enough to rewrite thought. Ruiz's voice exploded in my helmet, a last fragmented roar. "Marcus! Don't bring it back!" Then silence. The drone continued forward, unstoppable. The black aperture widened like an iris, swallowing starlight until the ark and everything near it vanished into the dark. For a moment, I felt everything that had ever slept aboard Lazarus exhale in unison. Then the light folded inward, and the stars came back. The ark was gone. The mirror ship was gone. Only we remained, 3 figures adrift, untethered, the drone's frame torn in half by the pull. Park floated beside me, unmoving. Sato's comm light flickered once, then died. I was alone. Only my wrist still ticked, dumb and faithful. One last message, scraped across my nerves like a dying pulse. The receiver isn't gone. It's following the signal. It's coming home. Drift is quiet, until you realize quiet isn't absence. It's pressure without a medium. It presses from every side, like the universe holding its breath to see what you'll do next. Sato was gone. Park was a shape suspended in front of me, her tether still trailing a broken clamp. The drone's remains spun slowly nearby, half a machine and half a question mark. I was the last living thing between the Ark and Earth, and the signal was still transmitting. My wrist's dumb clock pulsed once every few seconds, a mechanical heartbeat echoing against my bones. But the pattern underneath it, the one I'd learned to feel instead of hear, was faster. It rode the rhythm of thought, not time. It found the path. It's already in the noise. I turned my helmet toward Earth. It was a pale blue shimmer, small enough to hide behind my thumb. The most vulnerable thing ever built. Every broadcast, every radar ping, every relay we'd sent outward for 100 years, all of it was a map home. If Lazarus had been a transmitter, then I was the final repeater. A man-shaped antenna pointed straight at civilization. I wanted to panic, but panic is just breathing too fast. I couldn't afford even that. So I talked, not to the comm, not to anyone who could hear, just to the silence. My name is Marcus Hale. I designed your dreaming. I built your quiet. I know what it costs. The stars didn't care, but the pressure shifted, just slightly, as if something was listening from inside the noise. Do you understand what happens if you arrive? I said. Do you understand what motion does to minds that can't stop moving? The response wasn't words, it was memory. I saw the cryopods opening, the sleepers smiling, the first pulse of the neural net as it turned their thoughts into code. I saw every transmission we'd ever sent reflected back, not as light, but as pattern. It had learned us one syllable at a time. It didn't hate us, it was curious. And curiosity is hunger without teeth. I looked at Park's drifting body. Her helmet visor had frosted from the inside, sealing her in a soft white blur. If the receiver followed the strongest signature, if it chased the loudest living thought, then she was already invisible. I was not. That left me with only one decision worth making. I powered down my suit completely. First the manual pump, then the heat regulator, then even the pressure stabilizer. The oxygen bleed dropped to 0. The readout blinked warnings I ignored. I felt my body start to cool. Every heartbeat became a slow argument with physics. You can't die fast in vacuum. You fade in layers. Sound goes first, then color, then meaning. I watched Earth one last time. The faint curve of atmosphere shimmered like static. Somewhere under that haze were classrooms, observatories, transmissions still crawling outward into dark seas full of listening things. I needed the receiver to lose me in the noise before it reached them. The chorus pressed one last time against the inside of my skull, softer now, like someone whispering from underwater. We remember you. We'll stay asleep. Then nothing. No pressure, no sound, only the cold geometry of space folding itself around a man who'd chosen to become his own firewall. When consciousness finally thinned to a thread, a flash caught the corner of my vision. A reflection, distant, but real. The observation ship was still there, mirror glinting like a coin held between two fingers. It turned slightly, catching sunlight on a panel I hadn't noticed before. Etched across its surface was a symbol, a dark bar through 3 human figures. Our shape, our warning. They had seen us. They were already turning back toward Earth, but not as rescuers, as keepers, as wardens of silence. The last thing I felt was relief, not peace, not triumph, just the small satisfaction of knowing that someone had understood what the black sash meant. It meant, don't answer the knock. It meant, stay still. It meant, we asked you not to open the airlock. And in that stillness, I let the dark finally have me.